Hey guys, welcome back. My name's Aaron. This is Czar Finance, episode 11, car insurance. Now in today's episode, I'm going to walk you through some basic ways of how car insurance works, okay? So the most common type of car insurance that most people have is called liability insurance. Now what is liability insurance? What does that mean? So here's a quick example for you. I have a car here and there's another car here. If I drive into this car and I cause an accident, I am liable for the damages that happened because it was my fault. So it was my fault, so I am liable for the accident, hence the term liability insurance. So when you are at fault for a car accident like that, you are going to be, or you should recommendedly have coverage for the other party involved here. So if I crash into that person, you want to be covering their expenses. So they're going to cover their car, any damage that might be happening to their property damage, and or their possible health damage that they might incur with that car accident that you might have done. The reason you want to do that and cover somebody else first is so that they don't come back and sue you for the damage that you might have caused if you didn't have liability insurance, okay? So the reason being, again, you cause an accident, you're liable for the insurance, you want to cover them, and the reason being is your insurance will cover up to a certain amount. So say $100,000 to $300,000 depending on what you decide to select from your insurer. Now, the insurance will cover their expenses, anything that they might incur, and if they have insurance, if they have insurance, your insurance will cover up to a certain amount, say $100,000, and anything after that, their insurance will kick in and then cover the rest of the expenses. Now, if they don't have insurance, they're going to be held responsible for those expenses on their own payment for that expense. And so that's what liability insurance is. Now, accompanying liability insurance, most people want to have bodily injury protection as well as property damage protection. Bodily injury means if I come down the hill and I crash into somebody, I am liable for it, number one, so I'm going to help pay their insurance and pay their bodily injuries. But if I am in the car, which I am driving, and I sustain bodily injuries, if I break a rib or my leg gets damaged or something like that, my medical expenses will be paid for by the insurance up to a certain amount, say $100,000 or $200,000, etc. Whatever you decide to pay for and your limits of what you feel the threshold is. You can go up to $1 million if you want to. Again, same thing goes for property damage. If my car hits that other car, I'm going to cover them with liability insurance. I'm going to cover myself as a person with my my bodily injury insurance as well as my property insurance for the car that I might have driven. Because now my car could be wrecked, it could be dinged, it needs to get to an auto shop to get repaired, and I want to make sure that I'm covered for my car that I'm driving. So that way, if there's no major damage, I can go out and get a rental, or maybe I can go and get a new car because my car is totally wrecked with the property damage that I have insured for. So those are three types right there that are very important to have as a driver in society today. And so again, most common is liability insurance, and then if you want to cover yourself, it's the bodily injury as well as property damage protection insurance. Now, another example of insurance that is also out there is collision coverage. So collision coverage means if I'm driving down the highway and I hit a patch of ice, for example, and I end up being safe, but somebody else hits me, and then another person hits somebody else, another person hits somebody else. Basically, the damage is not my fault. Somebody else hit me, and it's going to cover my expenses for my vehicle as well as my bodily injury that I could be incurring. So it's going to cover the collision repairs and things like that for the auto repair shop up to a certain amount. Whatever that amount is, that's for you to decide. Now, another type of insurance that's also out there, there's only about 5 types of insurance that are out there, is comprehensive coverage. Now, what is comprehensive coverage? Comprehensive coverage basically means that if you're driving down the highway and you happen to hit an animal and you damage your vehicle, the insurance will cover your vehicle. If you happen to live in a low-lying area where there's a high flood zone, for example, and a hurricane comes by and floods your vehicle out, your insurance will cover that. If you're living in a tornado zone, or maybe you are in an earthquake zone, or maybe you're driving along and you park your car on the side of the road and a big tree branch falls over because of a storm, the insurance will cover that, and that's called comprehensive coverage. It's sort of like the act of God type of, it's not your fault for doing, it's not anybody's fault, it just kind of happened to your vehicle, and that insurance should cover that. up to, again, a certain amount that you allocate to the insurance. Say, I want to cover my car up to $20,000, or I want to cover up to $100,000, depending on what you want to do. Okay, so the next one in the list is basically personal protective injury insurance, basically protecting yourself in a vehicle. It's medical coverage for you and a passenger in your vehicle. So say you're driving along, you hit a patch of ice, and you slam into a guardrail and you get hurt and somebody in the vehicle gets hurt, that insurance will cover the people in the vehicle itself. So that's personal, what's it called again? It's called Personal Injury Protection Insurance, so, or PIP for short. So again, that will cover you and the person in your car up to a certain amount, again, depending on what you decide to cover the amount for. And that's for you to decide on the different types of insurance that are out there. So with that information, there's liability insurance, there's collision insurance, there's comprehensive coverage, there's personal injury protection, there's bodily injury protection, and then there's property damage insurance protection. Those are about 5 examples I can give you that'll help you get off to a good start in understanding what the insurance is all about with car insurance. Now, when it comes to car insurance, there's many different types of car insurance providers. Geico, there's Allstate, there's you know, I don't even know, there's the state insurance that you might, Allstate insurance, whatever you might be living in, they have different types of coverage that are out there. So you have to compare and shop with those insurance companies to find out what's the best package for you and what you can afford to pay those insurance companies to get the best coverage for your payment. You don't want to go too high and you don't want to go too low, but you want to make sure that you're going to be okay when you're driving your vehicle out into the public. Now again, how does this affect you, or how does this, how do insurance companies know what the level of insurance that you should be covered in? Well, it depends on what your occupation is. They look at your driving record. They look to see if you had any DWIs. They look at, you know, have you made payments on time? They want to know, are you worth covering? Because if you have a high rate of accidents, maybe they might say, hey, you know what? We'd love to cover you, but it's going to be really high because, you know, you've had a history of getting into a lot of car accidents. Not so good. Those are the type of things that the insurance company is going to look into and sort of base, you know, whether you're a good person or, you know, a high risk person, whether you're, you know, in the country and there's not too many things that are going on, you're low risk, whereas maybe you're in the inner city in New York City driving around and there's a lot of other vehicles and, you know, people around that you're at a high risk area for getting into an accident. So some things to consider with that. So I appreciate you watching in today. This is about car insurance. I hope that helped you out. My name's Aaron. This is Czar Finance, episode 11, car insurance. And on next week's episode, we're going to talk about, I'm going to walk you guys through how to go through a checking and savings account and establishing that. And I'm going to walk you through the steps of that. We covered this in an earlier episode, but on this episode, I'm going to walk you through the basics of how to actually set one up at your local bank. Thanks for joining me.